6 cards are going in and 6 cards are coming out of the Jump Scare Precon from Duskmourn. 1 of each card type and all for less than $1.50. I'm talking creature, sorcery, instant, artifact, enchantment, and land. Zimone Mystery Unraveler will be our commander with her 2-tiered landfall trigger. The first landfall trigger per turn will let you manifest Dread. That's where you look at the top 2 cards of your library, putting one face down on the battlefield as a 2/2 creature, and you put the other into the graveyard. The second and every subsequent landfall trigger will let you turn a permanent you control face up. In my precon review video, I mentioned how scary this can be with an Evolving Wilds turning into a Worldspine Worm. And while I view this deck as one of the better examples of a pay-to-win deck, it's still explosive with only a hyper-budget upgrade. And let's get into it. Paranormal Analyst is the creature edition. I know you were looking for a fatty, but I decided to save that discussion for later on in the video. With Zimone on the battlefield, the 1 and a blue Paranormal Analyst effectively has a landfall trigger that says draw a card. And it's not like the commander is the only way in the deck to manifest Dread, so avenues remain for the Analyst to draw you those cards I know you want. Paranormal Analyst is 7 cents. Kefnet the Mindful is the creature cut. While it's not out of the question for you to have a full grip of 7 cards throughout the game, it's not really a part of the game plan in this deck. For that reason, I wouldn't expect this creature to engage in creature things like attacking or blocking most of the time. I'm not going to pretend like having a mana sink that lets you draw cards isn't valuable, but I don't think it's enough to make up for what is otherwise a blank of a permanent. Vastwood Surge is the sorcery edition. This is a 3 and a green spell that lets you find 2 basic lands from your library to put onto the battlefield tapped. While I was playtesting the precon, I didn't have the best luck double procking Zimone with really any consistency. Being able to do so with a single spell will make sure the best face down card you have can see daylight. The kicker costs 4 mana to put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Jump Scare has over 30 creatures in the list, not including the face down creatures you generate, which could be any card type. These counters could get you the extra bit of punch you need to finish the game. Vastwood Surge costs 14 cents. Oversimplify is the sorcery cut, and I can't say I'm happy about it. This 3 green and a blue spell exiles all creatures and replaces them with a fractal token of varying sizes. The exile is great in this color pair, and I think it's fun to see how big the fractal tokens can grow, but this is one of 3 pseudo board wipes in the deck, and I rank the other options over Oversimplify. Ghostly Flicker is the instant edition. This has so many use cases, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is an auto include. This 2 and a blue spell will exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, or lands you control and return those cards to the battlefield under your control. Face down creatures you blank will return to the battlefield face up. You can target 2 lands you control to double trigger Zimone's landfall ability. You can protect your permanents from targeted removal by blanking them. Whether it's advancing or protecting your game plan, Ghostly Flicker will get the job done, and you can find it for 65 cents. Cackling Counterpart is the instant cut. Firstly, 1/3 of the creatures in the precon are legendary, which alone isn't enough of a reason to cut the spell, but it can make for an awkward draw. The second reason is that there isn't a way to make your creatures non-legendary baked into the deck. And the final reason, baked into the prior 2, is that I'm not the biggest fan of copy spells that only target your stuff when it isn't a major theme in your deck. If your board state is being controlled by your opponents, you can again find Cackling Counterpart to be an awkward draw. The 3 mana Pendant of Prosperity is the artifact edition. In a normal game, this spell enters under your opponent's control, with your opponents controlling the 2 mana activated ability. When you manifest this and flip it over with Zimone's ability, you get both halves of the Pendant's ability, netting you 2 drawn cards and up to 2 additional land drops every time you activate the artifact. Pendant of Prosperity can be found for 26 cents. Please take a quick moment to scroll down and click that subscribe button. I've got all sorts of commander budget content coming your way, especially with Foundations right around the corner. Simic Signet is the artifact cut. The deck is designed to prosper off landfall triggers. It's best to lean into ramp spells that bolster the landfall game plan instead of relying on mana rocks, which are no doubt helpful, but no doubt less synergistic. Threats around every corner is the enchantment addition. For 3 and a green, you start off Manifesting Dread, which is lovely to see. What's better is that Manifest Dread and every following face-down permanent entering triggers the second ability that finds you a basic land from your library to put onto your battlefield tapped. The ramp alone is super potent, but with Zimone on the battlefield, your first land drop will always turn into your second land drop, giving you the opportunity to flip over a permanent of your choice. This is everything you want with the Mystery Unraveler, and you can find it for 11 cents. Experimental Lab / Staff Room is the enchantment cut. I know that rooms are the cool new feature of Duskmourn, and I do like them generally, but I don't like how they interact in this deck. In order to unlock a room, you either need to cast one side, making it unlock when it enters, or pay the mana cost to unlock it when it's on the battlefield. If you Manifest Dread into a room and flip it over, it's a do-nothing enchantment until you invest mana into it. I suppose it's nice to have a mana sink available for you at some point in the game, but it's a pretty tough sell for me knowing how much value is possible with this game plan. Escape Tunnel is the land edition. The fetch land aspect of double triggering Zimone's landfall trigger is the obvious draw, but the second ability in a deck built to manifest 2/2 creatures can be hugely impactful. Say you Manifest Dread into a Hydra Omnivore or Shriekwood Devourer. You can crack the Escape Tunnel to make the face down 2/2 version of those creatures unblockable, which will remain in place even after you flip the creature over, increasing their power. That's a massive amount of damage to the table, or a massive influx of mana. And the deck isn't short on creatures that would love to take advantage of this interaction. Escape Tunnel can be bought for 18 cents. Thornwood Falls is going to be the land cut, which is shocking because Temple of the False Gods is in the deck. I just don't think a tap land whose utility begins and ends at 1 additional life point is what this deck is after. On the screen now are your 6 additions for the hyper budget upgrade, totaling $1.41. But don't go anywhere, because I promised fatties, and now we talk fatties, and more. My mind automatically goes to creatures, because they aren't reliant on Zimone to flip over, but she does expand the face-down boundaries to let you dip your toes into other permanent types. One with the Multiverse just got reprinted in the Miracle Worker precon, and that means at least a temporary price reduction. This spell lets you not only look at and play the top card of your library, but also lets you do it for free 1 time on each of your turns. That Duskmourn Commander reprint is a fraction of the price of the Brothers War printing at only 86 cents. God Pharaoh's Gift on every one of your combat steps can zombify a creature that has found its way into your graveyard and give it haste. Whether you're in the market for a utility piece like Augur of Autumn for access to additional cards, or want to get back to looping your creatures with Eudora Grave Gardener, God Pharaoh's Gift will give your creatures new life, and it's only 36 cents. When it comes to creatures, an addition like Rampaging Brontodon is just what the doctor ordered. Cheat this into play with Zimone and start taking huge chunks of life from your opponents. Later on in the game, with all the land-based ramp, this dinosaur could be angling for a knockout. Rampaging Brontodon is 23 cents. Siege Behemoth can be the ace up your sleeve to push damage through any number of creatures your opponents may throw in their way. It's hexproof, which is huge, and as long as it's attacking, lets all your creatures assign combat damage as though they weren't blocked, if you so choose. I love the flexibility of letting you pick and choose which creatures you'd like to destroy, but this is especially good for its ability to break through a mucked up battlefield. Siege Behemoth is $1.55. I feel somewhat compelled to mention Rampaging Baloths. This isn't a landfall deck per se, but it is a landfall enjoyer. The Baloths will supplement that extra mana with 4/4 beast tokens. Rampaging Baloths is about 50 cents and is going to be reprinted in Foundations. Tromokratus is here to show blue a little bit of love. It's a 7 mana 8/8 that's hexproof when not engaged in combat. The Kraken is either free damage or a removal spell because it cannot be blocked unless every creature your opponent controls controls blocks it. That means if your opponent has a tapped creature, or a creature that actually can't block, like Norrin Swift Survivalist, the Kraken is getting through. At 8 power, that's a pretty fast clock. Tromokratus is only 15 cents. And to represent for Simic, I've got Colossal Sky Turtle. I really like this spell in Zimone because it's a great creature to manifest onto the battlefield, but it's also a great draw at basically every stage of the game. The 2 channel abilities, being a regrowth or a bounce, can solve so many problems, and then as a creature, a 6/5 flying body is going to put in work. Colossal Sky Turtle is 33 cents. Morphing is the last concrete category I want to talk about before other random thoughts. This is a keyword among others like Megamorph and Disguise that will provide value when a creature is turned face up. Fathom Seer, for instance, can be turned face up at the cost of returning 2 islands you control to your hand. As a reward, you can draw 2 cards. I'm not in love with that trade, but simply paying the 1 and a blue because it was put onto the battlefield face down through Manifesting Dread instead of being cast with Morph, or turning it face up with Zimone's second landfall trigger, are both trades I'd be happy to make. Fully investing in a Morph style deck can be quite powerful and can easily keep up with decks that are 5 times the price. Mostly because all the best cards are still incredibly niche and therefore very cheap. Whether you want to full send into the style or just give it a try with Zimone, here are a few options. Aenoch Survivalist is a 1 and a green creature that can be turned face up to disenchant, destroying a target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Den Protector is a 1 and a green creature that is a regrowth when it's turned face up, returning a target card from your graveyard to your hand. Flourishing Bloomkin is yet another 1 and a green creature. This plant grows in strength based on the number of forests you control, and when it's turned face up, lets you find 2 forest cards from your library, putting 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and 1 into your hand. The disguise cost is 5, which seems appropriate, but if this was put on the battlefield through Manifesting Dread, that cost gets reduced to the mana cost. Printlifter Ooze is next in line for the 1 and a green tribal that I didn't realize I had going on until just now. This one creates Trampling Ooze creature tokens whenever the Printlifter or another creature is turned face up, with power equal to the number of other creatures you control. Stratus Dancer breaks the trend, but it's still 2 mana at 1 and a blue. This time there's no difference in cost, but countering a target instant or sorcery spell through a creature is pretty sweet stuff. Thousand Winds is more of a haymaker at 4 and 2 blue. When this elemental is turned face up, all other tapped creatures are returned to their owner's hands. That'll show them for swinging out at you. Supplemental cards for the Morph game plan are the Simic, Secret Plans, and Oblivious Bookworm. Secret Plans offers a small toughness boost to your face down creatures, and more importantly draws you a card when a permanent you control is turned face up. Oblivious Bookworm will loot at the beginning of your end step, but if a permanent entered face down under your control, or you turned a permanent you control face up during your turn, you get to skip out on the discarding portion of that loot. I've got some random thoughts for you, and I'm gonna start off with spells that interact with cards going into the graveyard from your library. Pedantic Learning is 2 blue and lets you pay 1 mana to draw a card whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from your library. The graveyard portion of Manifesting Dread does indeed come from your library, making for a reliable way to draw cards when you need to. Head Shredder is a 2 and 2 green vehicle that mills 2 when it attacks and can be crewed with 1 power. The second ability is Money, though, letting you put any land card you would have put into your graveyard from your library straight onto the battlefield. Grolnok the Omnivore offers a different direction, exiling those cards that would be put into your graveyard from your library with a Croak counter on them. As long as Grolnok is around, you can play those lands and cast those spells from exile that have a Croak counter on them. Now for the super random scattershot here at the end. Brainstorm effects can go a long way towards cheating out an impactful permanent and getting rid of a card you don't have use for. Glimpse the Core is a fine ramp spell spell that lets you grab a basic forest from your library to put onto the battlefield tapped. I like it in Jump Scare because of the second option that lets you return a cave card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This opens the door for a mini cave package with Promising Vein and Urza's Cave that can each double trigger Zimone's landfall ability. I particularly like Urza's Cave because you can snag any land from your library, and in this deck, a simple Terramorphic Expanse could be the right answer to keep the door open for another double land drop turn. Increasing the density of Manifest Dread spells also increases the percentage of finding a high impact spell to cheat into play. Under the skin for 2 and a green, Manifest Dread. After that, you can return any permanent in your graveyard to your hand. And the last spell I want to talk about is Vel'Gavoth's Onslaught. This scales with the amount of mana you pour into the double X casting cost, letting you manifest dread X times, putting X counters onto those creatures. Not only does this give you a lot of looks to find something great, it has game-winning upside on its own. This deck can ramp, so a late game 11 mana cast to make 5 7/7s is well within reach. Alright, I've talked enough for now, and I do thank you for watching this whole way through. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know in the comment about the budget upgrades you would have made to the Jump Scare Precon. Look out for Foundations content coming your way soon, and I'll catch you next time for some more monkeying around.